When the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up. Take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home. Far across the river, can you hear freedom calling? Calling me to answer. Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones.
We are live on a Monday. It's been a while since it's been a Monday morning live, Sean Young.
It has been. It has been. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
And good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everybody. Instagram, Facebook. What's the other one? YouTube. YouTube. That's the other one.
What's happening, everyone? Big day today. Big day today. MLK Day. Day of action here in Schenectady, across the capital region. I'm hopeful. Big plans, big speakers, big event, Jamaica.
It's going to be huge. This is just the very beginning. 8:30 in the morning on a Monday on a federal holiday that took 15 years to become a federal holiday, but that's another conversation. And then 10:30 brunch, 11:30 workshops, 12:30 amazing speakers, and then 6 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
Online teaching. So if you didn't know, now you know.
You got something to do all day here with all of us, and I'm truly looking forward to it. This is your early morning wake up. Letting you know this is federal holiday. We're going to big action today. Martin Luther King Day is today. His birthday was on the 15th, which my nephew actually shares that same birthday. And it's a huge opportunity, I think, for us to continue this conversation about human rights and civil rights, and actually talk about what King was about, and not the whitewashed version that we hear so much about coming from mainstream media.
For sure. Real quick, if you haven't registered for the events today, there's still time. Reclaim MLK 2025. Register now so you get the link for all the things we're doing. Yeah. White folks definitely want to just do kumbaya and peace on earth and turn the other cheek. Kind of over it.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, MLK talked about one of the things, so many different things to talk about with MLK and what he was about and what he said. But one of the things that stands out to me is it's a quote that he says, it didn't cost the nation anything to get the right vote established. We actually made money by desegregating public spaces in different shops, right? As a country, it made money.
Right.
The opportunity, and he was killed before he could actually see this through, for us to get the change that would actually impact the nation's poverty and housing and just quality of life was going to cost the nation billions, right? It's going to be a real and true investment that the country was going to have to make to actually make sure that there was equity for everyone in our country. And Dr. King didn't get a chance to see that through, but we're here as one of the iterations of that fight to make sure that that message is constantly heard and pushed forward for the new generation.
Yeah, because the number of people, especially elected officials, that like to talk about MLK and invoke his name, and I stand here in support of all that King stood for. When I hear them say that, I'm like, do you really?
Yeah.
Because there's the big three. And I mentioned it yesterday. Schenectady County Human Rights Commission had an event yesterday afternoon at the Rotterdam Community Center. Shout out. It was beautiful. Odelia and Arthur did a wonderful job. But part of what was discussed and shared was King was against racism. That's the easy part, right? That's the easy part. Well, I'm against racism. Yep. But he also was against militarism, which includes police. Let's get that part out there. And he was against capitalism. Right? And the economics that he talked about, and how it all was connected.
Yeah.
So when folks are like, I'm here for King, I'm here for MLK Day, I'm like, great. So what are we doing to shut down capitalism?
Not a damn thing.
When are we defunding police?
Never.
So you ain't really hear about King.
That's a fact.
Thanks for letting me know.
That's a fact. It's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to the version of the story of King and what we know about him today versus, the reality is that you're not really about Dr. King and his message and his work. He put a lot of effort into making sure, like, for instance, right now we see the deep price gouging by capitalists, the corporations of the country.
Yes.
I think that inflation, there was the information that came out just a couple of weeks ago about where we're at with the rising cost of goods in our country. And more than 50% of the reason why inflation is where it's at is because of price gouging by corporations, and to which our government is doing nothing about. Right?
Yep.
These corporations are making extreme profits.
Yep.
While we're not making the same wages or making less than what we once were. And the cost of living is continuing to go up and up and up and up. And at some point, there's going to be a breaking point, I believe. And we're just here to continue to make sure that that message is heard and that these conversations continue to happen and articulated in a way that we all can understand that it ain't easy, but the fight must go on.
I was looking to see if I could find the quote real quick because everyone talks about I have a dream, like all the time.
Yeah.
In third grade, in Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary here in Schenectady, we had it memorized and we did a performance and we, did the speech. But there were so many other speeches that King gave. And we're going to talk about that more tonight at 6:00 when we have online teaching. But there was this really specific one where he talked about the ills of capitalism and the impact of materialism. I am convinced that if we are to get to the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. So, and that, of course, was part of his Beyond Vietnam speech, which was 1 year before his assassination. So that part. So to all the elected officials or those that plan on running for office.
We do have a lot of that happening this year.
Oh, my goodness. When you invoke King's name, know what you're saying. Know what you're saying. Stop pretending because they do focus a lot. I find a lot of folks do this. They focus a lot on community and the day of service, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. also was a pastor, deep in his faith, cared about people being able to have the things they needed and taking care of one another, which is important, and destroying the systems and structures that prevent us from living our lives. So it's both people. It's not just the kumbaya and let's all be friends and let's value our differences. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's the real sense in this country, unfortunately, that it's okay to keep going with the myths of the country, keep going with this with what continues to allow the most vulnerable of us to be exploited and used and harmed and neglected and just left out. And that's why these conversations are so extremely important. This is why we are here as all of us to make sure the conversation once again continues moving forward, and not just the conversation, because this is a day of action. Right. We have, Robert Brooks was murdered last month. And at this point, no one's been fired from their job. No one's been charged or arrested for the brutal beating death of a man that had his handcuffed behind his back on video for everyone to see.
What everyone has seen.
Yeah. And yet we're still in this situation. So we're talking about human rights and Dr. King and his faithfulness to making sure that it's always addressed for all people. And yet our legislators who you just brought up, and they love invoking the name of King. Where y'all at on what happened to Robert Brooks? Not just Robert Brooks, but but so many others before him.
We have, I think we're at somewhere between 700 or 800 signatures on the petition about the martyr of Robert Brooks, and all of the individuals that were murdered before him, that are surviving abuse right now behind the wall. And there are names. There are so many names.
So many names
of individuals who have yet to get their justice.
That's right.
And King, the other part, let's talk about the nonviolent, right? People stop. I watched this a couple times over this weekend because all weekend there's been stuff going on about MLK. And people say King was nonviolent. He was a nonviolent activist. You need to finish the sentence because he was demanding justice, just like we are demanding justice for Robert Brooks and all of the others. It was nonviolent civil disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
It was disruptive. It put pressure on elected officials. He wasn't just like, it wasn't just sitting at the counter. It wasn't just, I sat at the counter and they poured milkshakes on me.
No.
It was, and I did these other things. There were marches, there were protests, there were rallies. And he understood the riots.
Yeah. What did he say? The riots are the voice
of the unheard.
The voices of the unheard.
And it goes even deeper than that, because that's another one we're going to be discussing tonight, 6 o'clock online. So make sure you register. It is not enough for me to stand before you tonight and condemn riots. It would be morally irresponsible for me to do that without, at the same time, condemning the contingent, intolerable conditions that exist in our society. These conditions that are the things that cause individuals to feel that they have no other alternative than to engage in violent rebellions to get attention. And as I must say tonight, that a riot is the language of the unheard.
Mm-hmm.
And
mm-hmm.
What is it America has failed to hear? What is it that America has failed to hear? Mm-hmm. It's a long list. That's what it is.
It is a long list. And I would say that the hearing is one portion of it. It's the ignoring.
Yes.
Of the screams. And I forget the brother. We had a brother up here. We actually showed his video, and I forgive me for forgetting his name, but he was on a news panel not too long ago, mm-hmm. and he talked about our nation's obscene kind of addiction to ignoring the screams of its underserved and the communities that are just have gone on neglected and abused for so long. And I really wish I remember his name, because that was just such a beautiful quote that he put together. But it's not just about, I think it is, yes, not hearing, choosing to ignore our screams and choosing to ignore what we're saying. And the impacts of that, Jamaica, are seen across all data fields. Right, when it comes, they love data, right?
Yes.
You love evidence and data until it disrupts what you actually want to do,
and then you'll ignore it and pretend.
So like we're tired of the same old. We're not allowing the half measures to go unchecked or the token kind of responses. Right. Governor Hochul, they need to be fired. That's all you say.
That's all she
about
said.
A man that gets brutally beat to death.
Murdered.
That was murdered. Yeah.
But when let it be a police officer that got murdered.
Exactly.
How quickly would justice have swooped in? And
at least their form of justice anyway.
Let's. I mean, when a healthcare CEO was gunned down in broad daylight. Everybody was called in. They called in the cavalry. Hochul wanted to create a special 911 line for CEOs.
Imagine that.
With one man being murdered and no video evidence that, clearly showed all the things, right? They're putting the case together. They have a suspect in custody that they quickly coordinated efforts to, find and track on video. Clear as day, and all she said was, "They should be fired. I am outraged. This is ridiculous."
That's the length of the outrage. I mean, because
they were just doing their job,
and they were doing. We talked about this before. They were doing really what they already know happens. They just choose to ignore it. All the way up the chain, there's accountability for what happened to Robert Brooks. And once again, not just Robert Brooks, but so many other men and women that are incarcerated in our country, and specifically the state. That has acquiescence all the way up the chain. They know. They choose to ignore it. All those lawsuits, all those complaints, all those families that have been trying to speak out for years about what's happening to their loved ones while they're incarcerated have gone on and had their voices unheard, their issues not dealt with in any significant way. And then the culture of violence against people that are actually a vulnerable population. When you think about the ability for one person to be isolated by 12, 15 individuals and handcuffed behind their back and be beaten like that. Like it's
including medical staff
just
that
watching.
Take an oath.
Who had taken? Thank you.
To do no harm.
Thank you. Yep.
And what do they think King would have done? What would have King done if he was alive today, which by the way, there are interviews where folks, I think it was CNN, was talking to King about the difference between the South and the North, and why does he think this, that, and a third, and King talked about the need to come to the North.
Mm-hmm.
Because while it was different, it wasn't that racism was absent.
Yeah.
And that there was a need for change here as well as we sit in upstate New York. King would not have just wrung his hands and been like, oh, that's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
Had folks called him, he very much would have showed up.
That's right.
Just like he did in Montgomery.
That's right.
And folks would have came and they would have rallied and they would have called for justice. But on this MLK Day, which again took 15 years to come into existence with the help of also Stevie Wonder and the leadership of Coretta Scott King, folks are invoking his name. I'm sure the governor on Friday had plenty of things to say at the plaza. I did not go.
Mm-hmm.
And how she honors and him. No, you watch the black man be lynched by your corrections officers. Those are your employees, Kathy. And all you want was for them to be fired.
And we showed up at the People's House, right? We showed up at the governor's mansion, aka the People's House.
Yeah.
And they made sure that the mansion was blocked off.
Yep.
And that the road was blocked off.
Yep.
And did she come out or send a rep or anyone come talk to the families of all those people that were out there to tell, talk about their families and what happened to them and how this was a shame and how they wanted justice? And
knew we were going to be there. Obviously knew we were going to be there. Like, there was no question. Now, we did not call her. We did not say, hey, Kathy. But we definitely had shared widely that we were going to be there, the number of organizations that were standing united in the call for justice from Robert Brooks, as well as the unnamed murdered.
Yeah.
And her response was to block the sidewalk, to block access to the People's House.
Mm-hmm.
That was the very clear message.
Mm-hmm.
About how she felt about people gathering, calling for justice, was to block access, not to invite them in, not to send a representative, like you said, but to say very clearly, no.
Not to have a conversation. And I just want to just acknowledge while we're talking, I just want to acknowledge what we're seeing in the chat.
Yeah.
You see Patrick Showers, the Marshall Project found that more than 90% of CEOs found liable by New York State for abuse of cover-up. Keep their jobs.
Right.
More than 90%.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I see our brother Angelo Maddox. What's up? Peace, my brother. Yeah, bro. The response definitely didn't match the crime committed of those cowardly individuals. And it is a cowardly act.
Yes.
To beat a man that way while handcuffed and subdued and completely unable to fight back in any way, shape, or form.
It is what MLK was fighting against, though. Mm-hmm. The violence of this country was something he spoke very clearly about, especially when he spoke out against the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
This is a country that was built on violence. We've talked about it many times. And so this idea that anyone should be surprised that a gang of corrections officers brutally beat and murdered on video an individual that they were in care of, air quotes, in care of, no one should be shocked or surprised. But just like during the civil rights era, it required video evidence for the overwhelming majority to go, oh, damn, they were telling the truth.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about, speaking specifically to the video of kids being hosed down by firemen, being attacked by police dogs, being beaten in the streets with their hands up, by police officers. Like that became a stain on the nation because that was a global impact.
Yes.
Right? Like people witnessing what's happening in the United States, this place of freedom, justice, and all of that. So the so-called place of freedom and justice.
Right.
And we see, and we saw that happening similarly, like you're saying, this video had a really deep impact and it's across the country. But as we're sitting here talking about it, right? And you said we shouldn't be surprised, we shouldn't be shocked. but we find ourselves always on the back foot, trying to have these discussions in a way that, like, look at what's happening. Mm-hmm. These are the challenges, trying to convince the people that we can not only can we have better, that we are the ones that can make it happen together as a community, and trying to push past this willful ignorance.
I mean, why do folks think that Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and I mean, the list goes on, were assassinated
in the first place,
or arrested, mm-hmm. or, you know, I mean, Assata Shakur had to escape from prison and flee the country, mm-hmm. because she was a threat to the status quo.
Yeah.
Right? Our Black leaders have been taken from us time and time again because of their greatness in unifying people in the fight to change the society that we're in, so that we are no longer second-class citizens.
Fred Hampton.
Exactly.
At 21.
And within years of each other.
Yeah.
Within years. So here we are on Monday, January 20th. I can't wait to find out whether or not that bell is actually audible. So that's going to be great. It's awesome. I'm just my children. Monday, January 20th, we have a whole host of things that are happening for the rest of today. Again, as a reminder, you still have time to register and show up and join us. That at 10:30 a.m., there is a brunch at Emmanuel Freedom's Church. At 11:30 is workshops, and there are a number of facilitators, very notable. Happen to have a journalist coming to talk about misinformation. We have a civil rights activist who's been doing this work for 60 years to talk about why we shouldn't be going to war. We have food advocates coming to talk about access and opportunity and all of the intersections, as well as we're making signs, y'all. We're going to do our arts and crafts.
Yeah.
Art as activism is a part of it. If you have not registered, you still can come through, because at 12:30, we got a whole lineup of speakers that are just going to bring down the house. But not bring down the house. I promise the church will still be standing. Sarah, I promise the church will still be standing. And including the executive director of the Human Rights Commission, Arthur Butler, who I'm so happy of the work that he does, and proud of us being able to work together and move our entire community forward. With a common theme and vision. He said, begin with the end in mind.
Begin with the end in mind. Begin with the goal.
Yep.
And just figure and work out the steps to get there. That's amazing. Like you said, wonderful speakers from CCA, the Center for Community Alternatives, the World Revolutionaries, Central BLM. NYCLU will be there.
Yes. Yep.
New York. That's New York Civil Liberties Union. For those that don't know that.
Right.
Those that don't know that alphabet soup, the acronym.
Yeah.
So just a wonderful lineup of speakers, and we're gonna be joined by many in our community.
Yes.
Right. There's a ton of people that already registered. We know it snowed
we have
yesterday.
Over 100 people registered.
Look, we know it snowed yesterday, but the roads are clear. And it's a little bit cold. Do not let that stop you from joining us today. Let's have a great brunch, a great time together.
Yes.
It is a day of action. Let's make it happen together.
And we're going to make sure that we continue to invoke justice for Robert Brooks.
We're
not going to let the 24-hour news cycle deviate us from our path and our purpose.
Yeah.
We're going to make sure his name is heard over and over again, as well as lifting up the names of so many that have been lost behind the wall, and those that continue to suffer. So we're going to wrap it up. Final words?
Be here. Be here today at 10:30 at Emmanuel Freedom's Church. Let's have that brunch. Let's have that discussion. Be a part of a day of action. There's more to do. Let's make it happen. January 20th, reclaiming MLK. Day of action. MLK. Let's make it happen, y'all.
All right. We'll see y'all there.
Peace.